Are we ready to go?
Yes, you can begin.
Okay, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Loretta Walsh. I am a city council member at large, and this is a city council meeting of the Public Safety Committee, September 22nd, 2020. Before we start the meeting, I would like council members and those in attendance to identify themselves, please. Starting with you, Councilmember Adams. Or how about Councilmember Friel?
Friel, City Council, 8th District.
Councilwoman
Councilmember-
Yolanda, okay, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Yolanda McCoy, 6th District.
Councilmember Linda Gray, 1st District.
Councilmember Michelle Harley, 4th District.
Okay,
Hanifa Shabazz, President, City Council.
okay, we'll get right to it then. Everything we have today on the agenda are their resolutions, so they do not have to be voted out of committee. And we're going to start with the police department. And the first one is a resolution approving a grant that the police department will make to the United States Department of Justice Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grants Program to support a cold case investigator and violence reduction overtime cost. I believe we have the chief here to answer to this one.
Yes, that's correct, Madam Chair. Chief Robert Tracy, Wilmington Police Department. And with me in my conference room is Dr. David Karras, our Police Policy Communications Director. So good evening, everyone. And the first one is the resolution to approve the police department's grant application to the United States Department of Justice Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Grant Program to support the city's cold case investigator and violence reduction overtime costs. This one is something that we re-up and reapply. There's no matching funds that we get every year. But within this, which is unique, we were able to bring upon a civilian cold case investigator to enhance our cold case investigations. Is a retired detective from the Wilmington Police Department. So out of the overall grant that has violence reduction initiatives in there, about $49,000 has been carved out for the salary of that individual.
Chief,
Yes.
I missed the last sentence you said.
Oh, my apologies. It's the $49,000 is a salary that's carved out of the overall $196,855 for a civilian cold case investigator. And the rest is to cover overtime costs related to violent crime reduction efforts within both patrol and our investigations.
Okay, thank you for answering that question because that seemed a bit high. So the officer or the retiree will make $49,000 and the rest will be overtime money.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Council members, anyone have any questions?
Yes, Councilmember Walsh, my hand is up.
Yes, Councilmember Harley.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My question to Chief is this. I think I heard you say that this is an annual grant that we submit this every year.
Yes, that's correct. This is one that's put out to all the police departments. It usually stays steady as far as the amount that we receive for specific violence reduction initiatives. And we're able to make a request to bring upon another cold case investigator.
Okay, so we brought one in last year on
No,
this grant?
No, we brought the civilian investigator in this year.
Oh, okay, that's what I was asking, if we applied for this annually. The only reason why I asked that question is because I was wondering how long does the money How does it secure the position? Is it 8 months, a whole year, 9 months, etc.?
Ma'am, it's 1 year and we actually reapply each year.
Okay, all right. That's what I was trying to find out. If there was someone doing that right now.
Yes, ma'am. We do have another civilian cold case investigator that has actually been rolled into our budget as a salaried employee in the Wilmington Police Department.
Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Hi.
Councilmember Gray.
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson, are you here?
Yes. I just wanted to be recognized, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gray. You have to turn on your microphone, please.
Thank you. I have no problems with the grant as I read it, but my concern is that Councilwoman Walsh has put into all of these grants that are written such that council is giving up the authority to review them prior to them being requested. And I don't know why someone would give up our voted in authority to review these. So I don't have a problem with the grant. I have a problem with the language of the resolution. I do not think that council should give up their ability to review these grants prior to them being submitted or prior to us writing the resolution and the grants being approved. So I'd like to know why that is included. I think it's included in every one of these grant requests.
And I think it's a difference of opinion, Councilmember. But thank you for bringing it to our
Why is it in
attention.
there? But why is it in there? I know it's a difference of opinion, but why would it be included that we give up our ability to vote, or we don't vote on a resolution, but give up our ability to have them presented to us prior to agreeing to it?
The ability to vote on what?
No, we're not voting on the resolution. So why it's in there that they don't have to bring it to us prior to applying for it? And I want to know why we are giving up that.
Many times they are under very strict timelines too. It's not that they're trying to get anything over on council. This is not anything that council,
It's called oversight, and we're giving that up. I don't understand why. I'm not thinking the police are trying to get anything over on us at all. It's just, I want to know why you would write legislation that gives up our oversight over it.
that's your opinion, Councilmember. It's not my opinion. So please don't state what I'm giving up. I'm not giving up anything.
You wrote it, and it
Chief.
states that we don't have to review it.
And we don't have to review it. It's somewhat of a courtesy that we're getting it to review. There's nothing in the grant application that says we have to review it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yes. I just wanted to just follow up. I know there are a great bit of deal of grants, and as we've had these questions in the past, I just wanted to to state and clear up some misinformation that, again, I think best practice is once the application's submitted, we can review it as long as it's not proprietary information, which that is the case with some of the grants. So I just wanted to clear up the record. And again, our job is to legislate, not necessarily review grants. So I trust the Wilmington Police Department that they have the city's best interests in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other council members? Councilmember Harley?
Oh, no, my hand's not up. Thank you, though.
Oh, it still was, so thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Any members of the public who would like to ask anything? Yes, MSATT. You're identified on the sign-in as MSATT. Do you have a question? Okay, Ron Handy Senior.
Okay, how you doing? I just have a
Good.
question. Great. What with the person with the crime reduction, whatever, is there any way that the public can see actually where crime was reduced or there's a matrix? Because looking at the Comstat reports, we have some areas where crime is going down, but when it comes down to the youth, we see that number keeps increasing and increasing. And with that person being paid with the reduction, what practices do they think will help us? Or is there any way that the public can see that?
Chief, would you like to respond to this, please?
Sure. When it comes to UCR reporting, the one thing we go by a standard FBI standards for uniform crime reporting that everyone in the United States has to go by the same methodology, and usually you get that 18 months after the year is completed, or actually 9 months later. So sometimes things that happen in January 1st of 2020, we're not going to see until September of 2021. What we do in the Wilmington Police Department is to try to be transparent as possible. But we put out Comstat reports that actually break down first on overall citywide Comstat numbers. Then we have 3 sectors. These sectors is reported out by sector, and within each sector we have 3 districts. So it's reported out. It shows geography, and it shows these areas where things are up, they're down, because you don't want to be looking at a city from the whole as a citywide. It's great to see how the city's doing, but as you pointed out, sir, there's different things happening in different neighborhoods. And if you break down that Comstat report, it'll take you to specific areas. If you go in depth on that report that's up online that we put up every week on Monday, following the two weeks of where the last report was taken out. Secondly, we have an app that's out there also that's on a public safety website that it's called Crime View. You can look up going back 6 months. You can geofence areas where you want to take a look at, where you can carve out a neighborhood, you can carve out a district, you can carve out a legislative district, and you can take a timestamp of what's going on to that neighborhood up until everything that happened just recently, a couple hours ago, and look for certain type of crimes. So we tried to do that. The mayor and I talked about putting some of these things out, getting ahead of these, not wait for a uniform crime report to come out, and then making sure that you don't have to wait for a civic association meeting from one of my sector captains to come out and start to give you that information, and or waiting for a city council meeting like this to report out on something I know I'm going to be getting into, shootings. And I could probably address some of the things when it comes to the youth, what's happening in what areas, and what we're trying to do to help reduce that, and some of the factors that are contributing to that I believe that we have to really work on holistically, not just within the police department, but with criminal justice partners, and also with the community and our other community members.
Right. And also, the last thing is, I know I submitted a letter requesting safe zones. We're going to revisit that, because with the number of youth shootings, at some point it's going to spill over into these community centers. So trying to get in front of that, making them safe zones so they can have the proper resources, so we can try to curtail some of that stuff, and then maybe get a handle on condensing the areas where the crime is at. Then we can better tackle the areas where the crime is at.
Yes, there's a lot of things that we're doing, Mr. Handy, as far as making sure that we do have those things. Unfortunately, this has been a very disruptive year with a lot of things that have been going on, and a lot of things that some of these strategies and things that we were doing for the youth, with adults, kids not in school, a lot of the programs we had for summer jobs, all that because of the pandemic. There's restrictions on doing a lot of these things, and I see ourselves starting to come out of it. And there are absolutely things that we should be looking at and making sure that we're revisiting to keep our kids safe, and then continue to build off some of the things that we already had in place before the pandemic.
Okay, great. I would love to provide any services or input to help you guys out, because I do love this city, and I do want to see a better quality life for the people that are in it.
Agreed, sir.
Ms. Walsh, can you hear me?
Who is this?
This is MSA. This is Ms. McCarthy. I was speaking earlier, and I'm assuming that you weren't able to hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you now,
Okay.
but the
I
other,
do-
excuse me, the other two gentlemen were just finishing.
Oh, okay. You can let me know when I can go ahead.
Yep.
You-
Okay, thank you, fellas. I think you can go now.
Yes, I do have a question for the police chief. And my question surrounds the shootings in the city. And they're numerous, and they're very frequent, and they're bold. They're not taking place during the nighttime any longer. They're shooting in the daytime. And so, Chief, I want to ask you, why does it appear as if the shooting is in the back of everybody's mind? Because if they are so bold to be shooting in the daytime, and we have a police force, why isn't the police force targeting those areas that the shootings are contained to? Because it's not like they are spread over the entire city. There are areas that are targeted where the shootings are repeated and they're taking place frequently in the same areas. So I would like you to answer, why aren't the police force targeting those areas to combat the gun violence?
Chief Tracy?
Chairwoman, I know we were going to get into shootings towards the end of the resolutions, but there's some of the things that are really important questions that Ms. McCarthy has just asked that will start to lead me into that. And I'm happy to really go into it, but not happy about what's happening. And this is why when we talk about these grants that we apply for to help violence reduction, overtime costs, and the next one that we're going to get in from the Homeland Security, talk about that resolution. These are the ones that help supplement the things that we're doing out there. That's a plant where I can hire additional officers to go into those areas that not only look at the geography of where these are happening, but there's a lot of individuals that have a higher propensity for violence that we continue to arrest. They come right back out and they reoffend, especially with gun crimes, especially picking up an illegal firearm and using it. This year, we are in those areas. My officers are calling it over the air. You talked about boldness, Ms. McCarthy. You're absolutely right. There is a boldness out there that my officers are right down the street and they can hear it and they call it in before it even comes over 911 or ShotSpotter. I've been out there this summer where I was dealing with one place where there was shots fired with a large crowd, and only a half block away, direct in my line of sight, someone started firing a gun with 4 or 5 of us police officers out on the street. So we are there. There is a boldness. That's a key word. And right now, this year, we've arrested more people with firearms this year than any other year in the last 5 years. And I went back to make sure I'm comparing apples to apples. But as far as I can go back, this year, we've arrested more people with firearms. And when we take a look at juveniles, this is a huge issue. And the last time I was able to speak about shootings, it was before the pandemic. And we talked about it in January. And I spoke about the concerns that I had with young people that have guns, that are emboldened, that are not afraid to use them. And I talked about how many we rearrest, yet they continue to get back out. And when they get back out, we're doing them a disservice because they've already pulled the trigger once or they're carrying a firearm. They're also going to be a victim of firearm violence. And if we don't get them the help that they need to figure out what's going on in their life, to rehabilitate them, to get them ready to go out, we're going to continue to have this problem. I have to continue to work with the rest of the criminal justice system to make sure that we're all on the same page, that there's a high risk for these individuals getting out. To a point where I speak to mothers of these children or my captains or people that are in the community, they ask us, Chief, can you keep my child in because he's going to get hurt and or he's going to hurt somebody? And these are the things, this is not anecdotal. This is absolutely happening day in, day out. This year so far, this year so far, we're up with juvenile arrest for guns, 40 this year so far versus 16 last year. We already arrested more juveniles with firearms by March of this year than all of 2019. There was 19 in 2019. We're at 40, and we still got 3 months to go. It's up from 2 years ago. It's up every year exponentially. And what's happening is that they're reoffending and they're getting back out on probation, parole, or pretrial supervision. So, and if we really, you talked about guns overall. So as of now, we've made over 205 total gun arrests this year, which is up 65% versus last year, 72% compared to 2 years ago, up 31%, 3 years ago, and up each year after that. Our juvenile gun arrests, we're up 150% compared to last year. We're up 233% compared to 2 years ago. We're up 100% in 2017, and it continues the increase each year after that. So then when you look at the guns, and you look
Okay,
at
Chief, if I may.
I really have to, it's gonna break can I just finish this one point?
Yes.
And then I'll get into everything, but I really wanted to lay it out there that as of August 31st, because I had to take a deeper dive into the guns and the gun arrests, and this is really telling. So out of 181 people arrested for guns, that was August 31st. 177 defendants were arrested at that date. And why do you say 181 gun arrests, but you have 177 offenders? Well, 4 people have been arrested twice this year. We arrested 4 people twice. One was arrested in January and then back again, released and back in February. One was arrested in January and then again in July. One was arrested in March and again in July. And then we had one that was arrested twice in August. He was released after we arrested with firearms. Out of these 177 defendants, 44% had prior gun arrests. One of these defendants had five prior gun arrests until we arrested him again this year. 6 of them had 4 prior gun arrests. 10 of them had 3. 20 of them had 2. And 41 of them had 1 prior gun arrest.
So Chief, if I may interrupt real quickly, what is the reason why they're being placed back on the street? Is it lack of evidence?
No, because we haven't even, these are all, I'm going to get into that and I will answer that question. But I think when I go through the rest of this, and Madam Chair, just give me 1 more minute and I'll finish up.
Okay, and that's all it's going to be too.
Yep. 62 of them were on some type of probation and pretrial supervision before their arrest on this gun charges. Out of them, the 177 defendants, they had over 1,800 felony charges and 3,000 misdemeanor charges. Juveniles accounted for almost 20% of these defendants. 10 of the 34 juveniles had prior gun arrests. 1 juvenile had over 5 arrests. And then when you look at what happens, it's not the evidence, it's when they go before arraignment and their first hearing. 5 of the 181 arrests were released without any bail. 41 of the 181 were given unsecured bail and released following arrest. Unsecured means you could put up you could talk about any amount, but you don't have to put any money up to be released. 45 of the 181 were given secured bail, requiring some bail to be released, and 90 were remanded with only cash-only bail. But then you have to take a look at, did they stay in? Well, 65% of these individuals, even after initial hearing, if they're on pretrial supervision, probation, these individuals, 65% of the people we arrest, it's not about evidence, it's about being released back to the street. And when you release people back out to the street without really dealing with the issue, expect a different result. These are the ones, the highest propensity for violence, that are doing the shootings. So these are the things, it's not an evidence, it's about it's where you're putting them. I'm sorry, if you've been arrested with a firearm once before, you shouldn't be released. You should be remanded. And because you're causing problems in the community and the things that you talked about, ma'am, I have some of the same concerns. And that's why some of these statistics are very telling that I'm talking about here. And that's why I got to continue to work with everyone to really highlight these things, to make sure that we're working with all our partners, and I continue to work with them and try to make sure that we can reverse this and we can start bringing down the shootings and people possessing firearms. Because in 2018, we were doing this. 2019, it started kicking up. And then all the other things with the disruptions that I'll get into when I talk about the shootings have really had an effect, not just in this city, but throughout the nation and every city.
Thank you. Before we continue on the shootings, because I broke the agenda rule and allowed that question at this time. We're still addressing the resolution that's before us. So let's get through this resolution, the next resolution, and then we'll go right on to the shootings, because they are absolutely the most important topic of today. And it's a shame it's all going to be broken up now. So does anyone have any more questions concerning the Edward Byrne Memorial Grant that's being applied for?
Yes.
Councilmember McCoy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I had just two questions. One was basically wanted to find out the amount of cold cases and basically how many of those cold cases actually were closed. Like, is there a percentage or something for maybe 2019? If we don't have that, at least 2018. If you don't have that information in front of you, I would love to have that information sent to all of council.
I will get that to you through the chair.
Okay. All right. And then the other thing was actually because of the language, something that Councilwoman Gray had brought up, I just wanted to get clarity. So what I'm getting is, because of the urgency to apply for some of the grants, that a resolution, let me see, like this resolution wants to clarify like that an application may be sent before we get a resolution. Like, I just wanted to make certain that that's kind of what I was reading in the resolution, because sometimes that already happens because of the urgency and trying to get things in by a deadline. That we may not actually get a resolution when the application is already gone out. Is that kind of what this that last, let me see, was that last line of the first whereas? I just wanted to get a little clarity. I just want to make sure I was looking at it
Should I
correctly.
answer this?
Not having council's approval by resolution is not going to hold up a grant application. That's the bottom line.
Okay.
These are really done as a courtesy to council, to keep council informed as to what money is coming into the city, how the money is being spent, etc. What type of programs are coming into the city. That's what it is. That we have to stop thinking that we have a say in how all these things are being run. We don't. But I think it's a courtesy that especially the police and fire department always try to meet when they can.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I have some other things, but I'll hold that.
Okay, thank you. See no other council members. Sharon, Brian, if you speak now, is this on this resolution on the Byrne grant, or is it another question for the chief? All right, seeing no other council members, we're just going to move this. We really don't need a vote on it because it is a resolution. Now we'll go to the second resolution, which is approving the police department's grant application to the state Department of Safety and Homeland Security to fund combat violent crime for fiscal 2021 to support violent crime reduction and overtime cost. Chief.
Madam Chair, this is no matching funds. This is something that comes out annually. All the police departments are in a formula of how much money will be allocated to them, but you have to reapply for it. This is something, once again, that we can supplement our crime prevention and crime reduction strategies as far as investigations, intelligence, and putting officers in some of the areas that Ms. McCarthy was talking about, in some of the areas that we have some additional violence compared to other places in the city.
And Chief, these funds can only be spent for what they're being applied for. Is that correct?
Absolutely. There's strict guidelines on how they can be used. So it's not for technology, but it's actually for the overtime costs, investigative costs, and intelligence costs.
But so when people start about, well, why can't you put that towards body cameras? Why can't you put that towards street cameras? Why can't you put that towards something else? That's not possible. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's specific guidelines that every police department has to follow for this grant to accept it. And there's audits on how it's being used, and we can disqualify ourselves if it's used for anything else.
Thank you. Council members, any questions on this grant? Any questions from a member of the public on this grant? Seeing none, we'll move on to the last police department subject, and that is, it's at the bottom of the agenda, but we're moving it up to number 3. It's the shooting updates by the Wilmington Police Department. And Chief, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So some of the things I hit on with Ms. McCarthy and some of her questions, but I did send out earlier today to the chair and council president and vice chair some of the numbers. So far this year, and this is year to date in 2020, we have 22 murders this year, 21 of them coming by gunshot, so over 90% of our murders are by firearm, compared to 15 at this point last year. In 2018, we were at 17 homicides. 2017, we're at 25, which was 3 more than we have right now. 2016, we were at 20 homicides, and 2015, we're at 21. So kind of flat versus 2016, 2015. We're down from 2017, and then we're up by 5 from 2018 and 7 from 2019. And each one of these years, once again, it falls into that 90% of our murders are by gunshot. The other murder that we had this year was by a stabbing edged weapon. So that leads us into the shooting incidents. We have 104 shooting incidents this year. Now I'm going to go into shooting incidents and then shooting victims. Shooting incidents is one incident where you have a shooting at a specific location at a time. So there might be multiple victims, but for shooting incidents, it's the incident that happened, not the amount of victims. I'll get into the victims right after this. So this year we're at 104 shooting incidents versus 61 last year at this time versus 53 year to date in 2018. We got to remember 2018 was an historically low year. It's about a 15-year low as far as shooting incidents and shooting victims. 2017, we were at 126 shooting incidents, which is over a 17% increase from this year. We were at 100 in 2016 and 91 in 2015. Going to the shooting victims. So once again, shooting incidents got multiple victims. So this year we were at 133 shooting victims versus 80 in 2019 versus 57 in 2018. We had 147 at this time in 2017, 113 in 2016, and 100 shooting victims in 2015. So those are the numbers that we're talking about year to date. That's as of midnight, Sunday night, so September 20th. And it just follows our CompStat manual. We close the books to make sure we have these numbers static. But the numbers haven't increased this year. Some of the things that we're doing and the things that I'll get into, we haven't had a shooting incident since last Tuesday. So it's been a week since our last shooting. There are some shots fired calls that are out there, but fortunately, we don't have anybody that's injured from these shootings. So everybody asks, what are we doing? First of all, we got to identify what's going on. where these shootings are happening, understand, with this year, I've looked at every other city in the United States, almost every city, to see exactly what's going on. New York, which has been the model agency and place that I learned and the methodologies that I came up with, big part of those, learning how to reduce crime and community engagement is up 100% in murders and shootings this year. And that's from a city that took a 90% reduction over 26 years, and a city of 8 million people, less than 300 murders, where they used to have about 2,300 a year, 20 some odd years ago, 25 years ago. You're looking at Philadelphia right now. They're on pace to set records that they haven't seen in 15 years in murders. Baltimore, which had the highest per capita last year, is equal to what they had. Cincinnati's up almost double. I looked across at Chicago. They've abandoned a lot of strategies a couple of years ago, and this year's even worse. They're actually going to see 25-year highs in murders. That's what they're trending to. You can name the city. You can name Mid-Sized City, Hartford, Connecticut, Albany, New York, Syracuse, Rochester, Albany. You can go right down to Richmond. They're all experiencing some of these things, and I see chiefs trying to look at these things, try to find ways to try to get ahead of these things. And kids are not in school, people are not working. There's a pandemic disruption that's going on. There's people that the only place they can get out is outside. There are things that are going across social media. But what I can tell you, what's happening in our city and probably other cities, is that these shootings, they're not random. They all know each other. And we actually have a good idea on who a lot of them are as well. They have a higher propensity for violence. We know who they are. You can see by the amount of arrests that we're making with guns. Carrying an illegal firearm is a gateway crime to murder. And this is what's happening. And how do you address this and make sure that you're looking at those individuals, not just locations, but people that have the highest propensity for violence to be a victim or an offender in a shooting. And that's what we've been doing. And Ms. McCarthy, you asked that question, and I'm showing you some of the numbers, the highest number of gun arrests that we've had on going back as far as I can do, apples to apples. And it's not by a small margin, it's by a large margin. And it's with juveniles. So we're going to continue to do what we did coming in. We're going to continue to do the community policing engagement, but that also takes a hit, and the community also is at a disadvantage. Where we're able to go to every civic association, we're able to go to all these meetings throughout the city. Where things are different, you don't want to centralize everything. You like to decentralize it, because what's happening in Riverside is a heck of a lot different than what's happening in Browntown. What's happening in Highland is different than what's happening in Southbridge. These are things that we like to go to these things, but Zoom is great. The technological advantages we have in this day and age compared to where we were before helps us a little bit, but it's not really a great substitute as far as that community engagement, where the informal and formal leaders are able to interact with the community and also interact with our police officers. So I think that part of the community engagement suffers. And then a lot of other things that are going on, that we've had pandemic, we've had social unrest, we've had justifiable outrage for the murder of George Floyd that happened 800 miles away from here. And it's opened up some wounds where people are very upset about it, and looking at police reform. And there have been protests, and I want to thank the leaders of the protest and able to protect the First Amendment rights for free speech, and to make sure that work together in the city to be able to do that and express that. But at the same time, other than May 30th, without criminal activity happening and destroying property or hurting people. So I want to thank them for their responsibility as we work together to make sure our city is doing a heck of a lot better than a Portland or a Seattle or some other cities where you're seeing a lot of issues. So we can kind of work together in a positive way to move forward on a lot of the concerns that people have. Those are the things that are happening. It stretches a police department out and doing protests. And then we have the DNC that came in. That's not just 2 nights. That takes almost 10, 12 days of planning and doing things. So that pulls away from us. A lot of things suffer when you have a good strategy in place because of that. So what do you need to do? You got to start to adjust in these times. And that's working with, I've spoken many times with, I'm on the Juvenile Justice Advisory Group with teams. We just met on some of the things that we need to do and maybe change. I'm on some subcommittees that possibly good intentions, but to make sure that we can help these juveniles out that are going down this road. And you see the numbers that I just talked about, how many are getting arrested with guns. And then also on how many are going to be a victim of gun violence. And I'm also on the criminal justice reform for adults as well. So I'm all about diversion. I'm all about helping those so they don't reoffend. But I'm also, there's accountability to the individuals who will pick up that gun and cause carnage in the community. And a lot of community members, like Ms. McCarthy, was asking me, what are we doing about it? And why do they keep getting out? And is it the evidence? Well, we're not at the evidence stage right now. So that's down the line. So until that point, we got to take a good look about releasing people back in the community that might do harm, that have a criminal history already to show that they're going to go pick up a gun or they're going to cause violence. So my job is to continue to work with our partners who are also dealing with disruptions in their part of the world when it comes to courts, it comes to the AG's office, it comes to corrections, it comes to parole probation. We're all in this together and we're all adjusting to a different type of thing going through unprecedented time with pandemic. That being said, we don't surrender. We never relent. We keep trying to find ways. And one of the things on top of, community policing, CompStat methodology, district integrity, still keeping the same officers in the same area, intelligence-led policing. We continue each time that there is a shooting, we don't slow down. There's an immediate phone call to the chief of police by the duty captain on the scene. And the duty captain starts to, if I don't respond, I get the phone call. And we go right along the post-shooting retaliatory plan to find out who the victim is. Because by knowing the victim, you might know the associates of the victim, because the associates of the victims are the ones going to retaliate. And we got to get ahead of that to make sure who we know, do the evidence, look for the videos, do the canvassing. Make sure that we do all the things as good investigators that have had our clearance rates in the last few years higher than the national average when it came to gun violence. So we're doing, and we can continue to do those things. And group violence intervention. So that's National Network of Safe Communities, David Kennedy. We brought group violence intervention in, but it was very difficult to get it off the ground because one of the main things is a call-in to the individuals at the highest propensity for violence. And when we bring them in to a call-in, so they all get the same message, that was only done once. That needs to be done every quarter or every 3 months and working with these individuals in between. That being said, we haven't stopped working with the individuals. Former Chief Bobby Cummings is actually overseeing that with the governor's office, the mayor's office, the police, the social services, Department of Family Support Services. So we pivoted. We started seeing the juvenile violence start an uptick that we started seeing the beginning of the year, and then went up exponentially because of this pandemic. And we talked about changing a model where we looked at adults, but now we're looking at juveniles. And how do you get to the juveniles? You can't bring them into a call-in. That's just not part of the process to bring them all in the same room. But you can do custom notifications. And what a custom notification is the ones that have the highest propensity for violence. And there's some individuals that are in the county that come into the city, go in the city to go in the county to do their violence. We have to work well with our state and also county partners as far as real-time intelligence to make sure we can get ahead of these things. But we're also making visits to their home. And we're bringing social services. We're telling them what risks they have. If it's relocation of the family, it's a danger to their family. Is it some services we can get? What can we do for their family? Anything that we can help them with their needs to help them get out of this type of violence and make sure that this family gets the support they need. We've started doing that last month, but a lot of these things, you don't start to see the results till a couple of months later. It's not like a light switch. And I guess we're starting to see in the last rash of violence we had a couple of weeks ago, there's a lot of individuals we know that are involved. We probably are not going to be able to arrest them for the shooting till we have more time to do investigations, but they're certainly committing other crimes and carrying guns that we've picked a lot of people up that we know are involved in this violence because they all know each other. So it's not random acts, but it's people that are going back and forth. Social media is a big way that they actually taunt each other and challenge each other. That sometimes doesn't end well. And we got to make sure that we're looking at everything to make sure we can get ahead of these things. And all these things are things that we're doing. And then the pivot on GVI and some of the things, we're going to start seeing things to slow down as we start to go into, now kids are starting to go back to school. Hopefully the economy is starting to open up. You're starting to see restaurants adapting to these things. People are coming back to their jobs. And I think a lot of things with the parks and rec, people are able to start to do these things. Sports are coming back. And a lot of these things bring us back to normalcy. Probably are going to help us get back to the police department and the normalcy of the type of work that we do, working with the community to help reduce these acts of violence. And I'm going to continue to work with our partners. I've had sit downs and long conversations with our partners about how we can get ahead of this, how we can slow this down, and how can we start to move in a direction where we were in 2018 and 2019.
Chief, may I ask you, when you're stopping these juveniles, and when you're arresting them too, are you getting guns off of them?
Yes, we arrested 40 juveniles with handguns, which is, we're in our 9th month this year. We only arrested 19 all of last year, 12 in 2018. So we're arresting more and more. And they also have a propensity to steal vehicles to do drive-by shootings in them. And we're arresting a lot of juveniles in stolen vehicles who are being released after released to their parents or released on their own reconnaissance back out into the community. We really need to take a look at what we're doing, and hopefully we do have a Ferris, we do have detention centers that actually can help with rehabilitation and things like that. And I hope we can start using more of that.
So that was kind of what I was going to ask you a bit. I would assume that you get some type of background on these kids, whether or not they do get turned over to parents or not. And is anything kept about them on whether or not up to that point they were in school, or whether they were doing virtual learning, anything at all?
Well, this is all new as far as the virtual coming at it. Last year was all new to us as far as the virtual learning. We're just getting back into it. Some private schools have all gone back full time. You know, I still have 3 boys in the school system, in the public school system here.
No, I know all that.
And they're still virtual. And I'll tell you right now, it's that learning and the ability to do other things and go out and do things in the freedom without being in class all day is a challenge.
I think my question was more of, does it appear that any of these kids are getting any guidance like that at home? That they're actually doing any type of virtual learning during the course of a day? Or are they just on the streets all day, every day?
It's tough to answer on that. I would hope that they're taking advantage and the schools can monitor it. I know they give out the computers and they can monitor the VPN to see if they're on it. I would have to defer to the school districts of the percentage of people that are learning that way, how many are there, and you know, and basically take a look at this week and are there more kids out on the street? That's something that I would have to take a good look at and follow up on. I think we're just coming out of the summer, so naturally there was a lot of people on the street during the daytime and even into the nighttime. So I'd have to take a good look. It wouldn't be fair for me to give an opinion. I'd like to take a better look at that, Madam Chair, as far as or check in with our school districts.
Are school districts notified when a kid gets picked up and charged? Not just picked up, but when charged. Are you aware?
If they're picked up, as juveniles have a lot of protection.
No, not just picked up. If they're actually arrested.
Well,
are the school districts notified of that?
No, we are not making notifications to the school districts of arrest.
What I'm trying to get at, Chief, is this is not just a Wilmington Police Department problem. This is a problem that has so many layers to it, with social workers and school districts and public defenders and state prosecutors and judges and magistrates and all sorts of layers to it. And yet it always boils down to, what is the Wilmington Police Department doing about it?
Right, and Madam Chair, also just going into a group violence intervention, how it's done for adults. We've pivoted to try to work on it and break those barriers of all the people that are accountable and responsible, as much as the police department that you talked about, and trying to work with them and be that point person to hit all those agencies in those respective areas for some of these juveniles that have resorted to violence or going down that road.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Yes, Chief Tracy. I appreciate the rundown this evening. I think you've done a comprehensive job of at least providing an outline of where we need to go. I do have a few poignant questions though. I know you've been a proponent of GVI for a long time, and you've seen it be successful. Have you considered other measures that we've seen in some jurisdictions, even out in California, something such as a pay for peace program? Where you're literally, paying the offenders to stay out of trouble. And it may seem controversial, but from the data that I've seen, it actually has a measure of success. I mean, it's cheaper to, I think, pay them to stay out of trouble almost than to incarcerate and or have them, keep, keeping our city in tailspin. So is that a program you've actually looked at and considered possibly adding to GVI? Obviously, the funding would have to be there, but is that something that's on the table?
Councilman, absolutely. The beauty of GVI, and as you heard, that it is a model, but it's something that's flexible. We don't lose the fidelity of the model because we're subscribing to a national model, and we're dealing with David Kennedy. I can call him up right now and ask him a question, and then we can talk about it to make sure that we're not doing more harm. One first thing is don't do further harm. But what you're talking about, we can visit, and absolutely we visit some of the things you talk about, pay for peace. Well, we're doing it in some ways where we're relocating individuals where the mom said it's the area that this one child is in, the influence of the people, other kids that are around him. He's a follower, but he also wants to be accepted. So he might be a trigger puller. So she knows this. She's asked for help. And I really can't talk about the specifics of the family, but we're looking to relocate them to somewhere else in the state that'll keep them to get them a fresh start, because these are some of the things that they need. So pay for peace, I think we're doing it in different ways, but it's something that we'll always explore within it. And just even, the violence interrupters where people are out on the street. These are other components that we can pull into this. We're looking at ways that each city is different. It's unique. So you don't want to cookie cutter it, but you have to be flexible enough to do some of the things that you talked about. And absolutely, we look at it all, and we read up and we look at some statistical studies. Sometimes when some other city's doing it first, we can actually, if the model's successful, we don't have to make some of the mistakes and growing pains that they had to do, that we can try to eliminate that. And so we're always studying for new ways and researching. And every morning, Police Executive Research Forum and then International Association of Chiefs of Police, which are industry organizations I belong to, I read every morning about every police department and things that come up, what they're doing, innovative ways, National League of Cities. I continue to look at this, and I'm open to any of that. And some things, they might work, but we could say that in my experience, they're probably not going to work in this area. But sometimes funding is a big part. Money always is a big part, but what do you got to lose? You should be open to a lot of things, and I think sometimes when you start to have to make those hard decisions, can and can't do it, comes down to some of the funding or where is it going to come from if we're going to add this layer. But I also want to make sure that we're not trying to do too many things at once. We haven't even give GVI a chance, because the pandemic really hasn't, to really be fully implemented in the model that it's at. And we already pivoted to juveniles at a necessity, but I want to make sure that this is given a full chance. And we can add things, but I want to be careful, not trying to do everything and accomplishing, not accomplishing what we need to do.
And a follow-up question, Chief,
Council member,
if I may, Madam Chair. In terms of, we talk about the pandemic, in terms of COVID, is there an opportunity to maybe access any COVID CARES Act dollars to combat some of this crime? I mean, because it's kind of sitting back, I'm not an expert on COVID funds, but it seems like we could tie a lot of the crime and the uptick in shooting to CARES, to COVID, and possibly that could be a source of funds. Is that something that the department is looking into?
We absolutely, there was another formula that was giving out through the CARES Act, and we were given additional money through the Byrne grant as far as through the CARES Act that every police department in the state that was given. And we have used it towards some of the things as far as additional overtime costs. The costs are going out because of COVID issues. These sites where people are being tested, I have to make sure that it's orderly and we assign officers there for traffic, for everything else. So we have expanded roles because of that, and we have used it. How it can be used in other ways, I think that has to be presented, not to try to get political, but I understand the county exec really oversees that type of money where it's distributed to. And I'm sure there's a lot of good things that could be done with that amount of money with the right plan.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
thank you. Councilmember McCoy,
I've had my hand
Councilmember McCoy,
up.
Thank you very much. I'm so sorry. I didn't write down my question. I've actually blanked out there for a second. Sugar.
I can come back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes, thank you. I would like to say that I think the chief's efforts are really good. They're paying off. Considering I'm somewhat familiar from living in Chicago, they did something similar with bringing in gang members and incorporating them in policing the gangs. And I'm not sure if they paid them or not, but it eventually calmed down. And this is something that takes time. There's no one sure kill. So I agree with the chief on that. And also, since I presided over truancy court at one time, I totally agree that tracking and control of the juveniles and the system that is supposed to support them and also punish them is sort of dysfunctional. There's a lot of different philosophies on juveniles and what they know and how old they should be before they're punished. So there's a lot of things interacting. So I understand that, and this is a compliment. But on the other side, when the chief discussed working with the community and getting people to buy in, I don't understand how the FOP, and I must say that I was a member of FOP Lodge for almost 20 years. So I understand the blue line somewhat, but I don't understand how a police force that polices 70% Black and brown people could support Trump. I think right there's a division in trying to get the community to understand you and to work with you. And I have talked to quite a few police officers, and they tell me they didn't vote for it. It was a large vote.
Councilmember, I'm sorry to do this to you, but we're really not allowed to discuss politics on a
I've gotten
government
so
airwaves.
many emails about discuss politics. That's what we're here for. And I'm just asking the chief, how can he expect? He's discussing community, working with the community, being in the community, bringing them forth, having them talk to them about what's going on. How can he expect a Black and brown community to do that when FOP is backing Trump? I just like an explanation.
I don't think it's up to the chief to explain a political stand his union is doing, and I'm not even sure if he's an active member of that particular union.
Yes, he
So,
is. Wilmington Police are a member of the FOP.
I understand, but chiefs normally are not.
Well, that's what I want the officers that didn't support that maybe to come forth in the community, because
Well, I think if you want to speak with those officers individually, the chief can give you a list of police officers and you can contact them.
No, this
and
is
ask
for the
them.
community, not for me. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
may I just answer? I'm not
not
part
if
of
you're
the.
going to get into politics, chief.
I'm not
No,
going to get
you're
into
not allowed.
politics. Absolutely not. I don't want to go down that road, ma'am, and I know you'll stop me. I'm not a member of the FOP, and that's something. All my officers, I continue to mentor, teach them, and a lot of them already have this. I don't have to teach them to treat very be respectful for everybody else's views, be respectful of the community, listen, stay neutral. You know, we're apolitical and we should be that way. How the union decided to do what they did, that's up to them, and I can't answer for them. And you know, with any body, it's, you know, that's not reflective. I know you feel strongly about this, but that's not reflective of who we are. And even we're to stay neutral. That's like asking me to, do I have Biden or Trump? But I represent everyone, and no matter what your views are, I'm going to protect you equally and give you the same type of service. And I expect that out of my offices, and to be treating people with respect.
Thank you, Chief. And I realize no management is part of FOP, but thank you for your answer. Thank you.
Councilmember McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, I finally figured out what it was. I was pleased to hear, you know, you started speaking about the GVI. And I do recall at a time that I've actually asked for a presentation to be placed on the agenda by the vice chair and by the chair. And I just wanted to know whether or not we can ever get a presentation about the GVI and what they're actually doing with the community and how this is actually going to benefit, whether or not it's something that's able to be presented. I've actually asked for this before we went through the spike, before we went through COVID. It's been more than a year. So just wanted to find out if that's something that's possible.
Well, I apologize to you for not following through on that. And I really don't remember following through on it at all. So I will absolutely find out if that's possible.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, can I answer
Yes.
that question?
Yes.
Absolutely, Councilwoman McCoy. And I would love to have a presentation done on that. And anytime that the chair, we can get that on the schedule. I will have former Police Chief Bobby Cummings and some of the staff members. They're pretty excited about the type of work that a lot of us, I didn't want to go into too much time with it. I want to talk about it, but they can go in greater detail to bring up a lot of specifics that you see some positive things that are being done. And I actually encourage it. And if we have an opportunity to do that, we would love to have the GVI presented to this body.
Well, Chief, how about if we give you that duty and that you make sure they know that we would like them, if they're doing this work all the time, then they should have things right at their fingertips so that we will let them know the date for our October meeting and we expect them to be there.
Well, I will get that done, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, other members of council, any questions? Seeing none, I'll go to the public. Sharon Bryant. Sharon? Sharon Bryant? Okay, Miss SATT. Miss.
That's Miss Attorney.
Oh, thank you.
But Chief, thank you so much. And I'm going to travel down the road where Councilman, I think it's Johnson, went. I believe that you mentioned that these offenders are getting out when they're arrested. And I'm a bit dismayed to find that out with the heightened shooting, the killings that are taking place, that this is happening. And I'm not going into a way to accuse, but I'm wondering, when I was doing my criminal justice degree, I learned that most of the times when offenders get off, it's because of police reports not done correctly. So that's not an issue, but I'm just putting that out to find out exactly why this is happening. But here is something I want to present. Since we're having so many shootings, to be proactive, I have a friend, a girlfriend, and she lives in an area off of Vandever Avenue. And she told me that many nights there are several shootings and the police are not present. And so I do understand you're mentioning that the police are, making arrests, but in these areas, there are shootings and there are no police. So I want to know if you ever considered maybe infiltrate those areas with unmarked cars or target the out-of-state tags, because what we want to do is to maybe try to eliminate the problem, the cause rather, and then the problem will fix itself. So where are the guns coming from? The out-of-state tags bringing them in, because the guns are coming from someplace. So do you ever consider targeting all these Philadelphia cars that you see in a day in the city? Are they being pulled over often? And another thing, I saw Philadelphia had a program, and this program was asking them to drop their guns off, no questions asked. They were giving them a voucher and they were able to drop off the guns. So are these things that you can really put in place to minimize some of these killings? Because it's really getting a little bit disturbing every time you turn around, someone's child is being killed. I watched the news, and I'm going to allow you to answer, but I watched the news in Philadelphia, and they were able to make an arrest and real quickly. And the reason why, the police was next door. They heard the shootings and they actually shot someone, and the police chased, they caught up and they made the arrest. So that's the reason why I want to know, have you ever considered infiltrating these areas with unmarked cars, targeting the out-of-state tags, and maybe have some friendly programs to collect some of these guns off the street?
Chief,
The answer is yes. We do investigations all the time. That's things that we don't talk about until you see the arrests that come out. If you look at Nixle, and I encourage you, if you haven't already done, Nixle alerts, where you'll get daily updates of the type of work that, I can't go into the investigative piece, but this is a lot of the things that we're doing in these investigations you're talking about. We are in those areas making arrests. I know of already 2 to 3 gun arrests that we've made just up in the area that you were talking about. We absolutely, the amount of where the shots fired are happening, where our officers are making arrests, where we're having some of the violence, absolutely each one of my sector captains, and up in Sector 1, which covers the area of Vanderveer, that's Captain Fahim Akil. So he absolutely is involved. He reports out to what's happening. I look for the plan, an overall action plan, when we have some increases in violence. And then what we do on a daily basis as far as directed patrols. One of the things I didn't hit on is I've talked about it many times, and even when I came through the door back in 2017, as far as directed patrols and making sure we're in these areas that you're talking about, because the community is asking for us to be in those areas. And then we also see through intelligence information and/or information that's coming from the community, and not to put them in harm's way. They're telling us where to be, as you are on this call, and it's our follow up on it, and then how we get back to everyone. And right now, losing these community meetings, we're losing that feedback in a whole group that we used to have, on a regular basis. And, like I said, we're trying to overcome it by Zoom, the social distancing and everything else that's happening. I really believe that has really hurt us as far as the community engagement. We're finding ways to try to have this conversation that you're having with us right now over Zoom, once again, over Zoom, that we would be having at a community meeting, and especially with one of my captains. Yes, can't go into specifics. Yes, things like that are being done. And then as far as the gun buyback programs, we've had them before. ATF works closely with us. We got a crime gun intelligence center within this building. We trace all guns and shell casings that are used at these scenes that help us solve a lot of these crimes and make those gun arrests and the people with firearms that I can't tell you what's going on behind the investigation, but I can tell you a lot of them are because of investigations we're making. The other thing is, if someone has one of those firearms out there and they're using these firearms to do nefarious things, they're not going to be willing to be giving those up. They're using them, they'll trade them off. And it's a mixed bag of results. Are they effective or not? But if more guns can come off the street, we can find a way. Once again, I'm open to it for all the right reasons.
Thank you. Ron Handy? Mr. Handy?
Okay, this allow me to.
Yes.
Great. Question. Just listening. What the city being made up? What is it? 68% of Black and brown people, and the police department is what, 25% or less than 25%. What in your recruiting procedures are you going to implement? Because if more officers look like the community that they serve, maybe we have more
Okay, this
community
is about
involvement.
shootings.
Yes, and that's what I was going to bring it up to. So with that being said, then maybe we can get more information about what's going on in the communities with these shootings. A lot of times people don't come out and speak because they don't feel comfortable speaking to those police officers.
Mr. Handy, I think.
Chief?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Handy, I believe you're absolutely right as far as familiarizing yourself with your officers. And that's why I have a thing called district integrity. When I first got here, officers were working all over the city, and they could be working in Browntown one day, and once again, they could be up in Riverside. And then the next night, they can be over in 40 acres. And they're not getting to know the community. They're not getting to know the conditions, even regardless of race. I think, we're not going to be able to segregate officers. We're working on those things, and I'll address that in a second. But I would still want all our officers to be familiar in the area, regardless of their race, and develop those relationships. And the only way to develop those relationships is be in the same area every time you work. Give respect to the community. Go to the community meetings. Be sincere from what you need to do. Follow up with them. And that builds relationships as well. We were able to go over with our clearance rates. We weren't very high a few years ago. And clearance rates, we have the best detectives in the world as far as closing cases and making the arrests. But I really believe the community has to trust you and come forward. And part of my overall plan and strategy that's worked in other places is that you got to keep the same officers in the same area. So the first time that the officers are having a conversation is not at a shooting scene, but they've already had a relationship, whether you're of any race, to make sure that you actually develop that trust, or you start to build on that trust. And we've had more phone calls come in and more people coming forward in the last couple of years. That's why our clearance rates, solvability of murders has been above the national average, where we haven't been before. And I really attribute that to the relationships we're building. Once again, I think we're sliding backwards a little bit because of the ability to do what we were getting better and better at. But we're not going to stop doing that. We're going to continue to move forward. And as far as the recruitment, one of the biggest things right now, before everything that was happening and some of the protests and unrest, police departments were hurting getting officers. It was very difficult to recruit police officers. That hasn't been the case in Wilmington. And even in the last class, we have a class going through right now. I don't know how the number is going to shake out, but we put out a quarterly report that Councilwoman Gray that had asked us for, and and the council will be getting our October 1st report on what we're doing, how we're trying to increase minorities in the police department, and try to get us to a place where our police department looks more like the people that we serve. So there is an effort. I've put Inspector Chuck Emery and Captain Counts, who are charged with making sure that we can get out there, recruit, and then in that thing, it's very comprehensive. That actually Councilwoman Gray gave us a compliment on what we did and the steps that we took for this new class that we want to put in, and they're still going through the process. So we are aware. It's something that I'm dedicated to, the Wilmington Police Department, the city of Wilmington. And those things don't happen overnight, but we're going to try to get to the place where your concerns are, and so are ours.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Handy.
you. Council members. Okay, thank you, Chief, for attending today.
Thank you, Chairman.
Appreciate it.
Chairwoman.
We're now going to move on to the fire department. Chief, are you here? Chief
Yes,
Donahue,
Madam
is
Chair.
that-
Yes, Madam
Thank
Chair, I'm
you
here.
Thank you for staying.
My pleasure.
We're going to start with my favorite subject on the fire department, your fireboat. Would you like to
Yes,
tell
Madam.
us what you're doing, Chief?
Yes, Madam Chair. There's a couple member of my staff here, Chief Zipfel, Deputy Chief Byrne, and Battalion Chief John Looney. Basically, our grant through FEMA, Department of Homeland Security, for $75,000 is just to support routine maintenance to our fireboat. We've been successful at getting this grant again, and it allows us to, it's kind of spelled out in the resolution, exterior maintenance, painting of the hull, touch-up paint, and motor jet maintenance, which is something that this boat needs. So that's pretty much it. It's a $75,000 grant, and our portion of the match is $18,750. And it's a 3-year grant.
Which that $18,750, you already have that in the budget, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Council members? Anyone have any questions on this? Members of the public, anyone have any questions on this? Well, seeing none, we don't need a vote on this because it's a resolution. That was probably the easiest boat money your department has ever gotten in 30 years, Chief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Council.
Hopefully the second one.
Good job. Okay, we'll go into our second one. Where are we? Is this the emergency management one?
Yes, this is DEMA, Delaware Emergency Management
Oh my
Agency, for radiation pagers. Recently, we went over the City of Wilmington Emergency Operations Plan with Emergency Management, Willie Patrick, and we discussed our limited capabilities for radiation detection. And it's something that we need to be prepared for. There's radiation traveling up and down the highway, so we want to be able to better respond safely, safe for the public and safe for our personnel. So this is a no-match grant. It's for 20 gamma neutron pagers, and we can put them in all the apparatus and the district chief's cars. So we would be totally covered throughout the city for these types of emergencies, if and when they were to happen.
Can I ask you a question on this?
Yes.
Oh, it's the Delaware Emergency Management. He's chair of the Wilmington Emergency Management, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Willie Patrick, he's our emergency manager. This went through DEMA,
All
the
right.
state agency.
And for $77,415.
Yes, and that's no match.
Yep. Council members, anyone have any questions? Do any members of the public have any questions right now? Again, this is a resolution. Does not need anybody's approval at this moment. Okay, the next one.
Yes, Madam Chair. Following city code, our manpower of 156, authorized strength has fallen below 95%. Presently, I'm down 11 personnel, which leaves my firefighting force at 145. And this resolution is requesting that we be able to commence a fire recruit academy.
Chief, I want to say that I like seeing your effort that you're making out there to get the fact that there are going to be openings on the fire department out there. I've liked what I've seen on social media. I think it's unfortunate that you have some of your own troops who are not happy with their present contract, who try to blow up something as nice as posting about a potential career job for another human being. And you know, it just amazes me that if some people are really that sincerely unhappy with their job, then they just go look for another one somewhere else, if it's that god awful. So I think you are doing a nice job of reaching out. If any council members have any ideas for you, I'm sure they will contact you to let you know how they think you can reach people even a bit more than you are now. But I just wanted to congratulate you for the effort.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And we're going to keep doing what we've been doing. We have a couple new things coming out, but we have sent interest cards to council. We have sent interest cards to various places. And as of today, we already have 180 interest cards of people that would like to apply for the Wilmington Fire Department. And 38 of them are city residents. So that's more than we had applied to the last two classes. So we are off to a good start. And we have another recruitment video coming. We've been advertising all over the place. So I think we're going to be able to put on a very diverse class once this all shakes out.
That's great. Council members, would anyone like to say anything?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes. I would like to second Chairwoman Walsh's sentiments. I appreciate the effort. I know, similar to the police department, we've talked for a long time about the need for diversity and what's the plan. And I know the fire department came early and gave us kind of an outline. You know, you and the deputy chief have done that. So I appreciate that sentiment. Also, the social media I know helps. And now as we go forward, in terms of where you're going, Chief, are you looking just in Wilmington, or are you spreading this throughout the tri-state? Because from my understanding with the industry, it does seem like folks may apply from out of state. So are you actually looking outside of just the immediate Wilmington area?
I spoke of the interest cards, 180 interest cards from 11 states already. So the word is out there. We usually routinely get a lot from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, but we have them from Florida, California, North, South Carolina, Virginia. So the word is out there, and my staff has done a tremendous job with the social media. The whole recruitment process, the recruitment team has been doing a fantastic job to get the word out there. So we are expanding our search.
Okay, great. Because that was at least on the council side, I know something we've talked about, and we just want to make sure it's getting to everyone, you know, whether it's they live in the area or not. So I appreciate that. And again, second, Councilwoman Walsh's sentiment. The department has done a great job, and it's a shame, you know, there's a few that are grumble, but you know, you guys really continue to serve the city. Very, 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 very great department. So I appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other council members have anything they'd like to say? Any member of the public? Is there anything you would like to say? Seeing nothing, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time and patience.
Take care.
Thank you.